And that was actually something that came up in one of my research studies looking at the client experience with eating behavior change and their experiences with dietitians. And the nutrition clients under research settings basically said that to me, like, you need to let us know how long to expect things will take, that things might be difficult. And so that's one technique that I teach very much in my program. And all the dietitians that finish the 12-week program are very clear on how to be explaining the process of change to their clients, how to be helping them manage their expectations, because that's a crucial part to improving people's tolerance for change.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to RD's Thriving in Private Practice, where we share our collective wisdom about building a nutrition business and get inspired. I'm Catherine Dittman, and joining me today is Stephanie Notaras. Stephanie is an accredited practicing dietitian in Australia with over 12 years of experience specializing in renal nutrition. She holds a master's in social health and counseling and is currently pursuing a PhD. Stephanie has developed and published a counseling skills framework for dietitians and nutritionists, equipping practitioners with the tools to enhance client engagement, troubleshoot difficult cases, and achieve higher success rates. Early in her career, Stephanie recognized that nutrition education alone often falls short in helping clients create meaningful change. Frustrated by clients' lack of follow-through, she sought advanced counseling training, transforming her practice and client outcomes. Today, Stephanie teaches dietitians and nutritionists how to integrate essential counseling and coaching strategies into their consults, improving their structure, effectiveness, and efficiency. Stephanie's evidence-based practical guidance empowers dietitians to build stronger client relationships, address barriers to change, and bring about lasting behavior shifts. She also supervises dietitians, lectures student dietitians, and has published multiple studies on counseling skills and client experiences in eating behavior change. As a testament to her skill and dedication, Stephanie won Australian Dietitian of the Year in 2024. Welcome, Stephanie. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Catherine. I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Excellent, excellent. And so we'll start in the usual way. I'd love to hear a bit about your journey as a dietitian and what led you to your current specialty and specialties and the populations that you serve.
Yes, I'd love to share that with you. So I became a dietitian back in 2019, and I think what drew me the most to our profession was just as I was growing up, I was starting to really appreciate the role that nutrition plays in not only our health, but in our relationships. And it was something that I decided quite last minute to pursue as my career, but I'm really glad that I did. My specialty is in renal nutrition, and I would have never thought that I would have ended up being a renal dietitian. But one of the ways that I got there was that I was really struggling with my own counseling skills when I first became a dietitian. I would have these amazing initial consultations with people, but then they'd come back, they'd be struggling to change. And I didn't really have much more to offer other than a couple of questions that were not very deep and trying to re-educate them to try again later. And this kept on being a recurring cycle and pattern that I was seeing. And I started thinking to myself, this can't just be that every single client that is coming to see me is not ready for change. There's got to be something else that I am missing, because this is a systemic issue. And thankfully, I had wonderful mentors along the way. And one of them encouraged me to pursue a counseling master's, which I did, and that transformed my practice. And when I completed my master's, I took every single skill that I learned from there that could potentially be applied to our nutrition care process and all of our competency standards and performance indicators. And I created my own different nutrition care counseling process for myself. And that's how I ended up in renal, because I asked my manager at the time, what do you think is going to be an area of practice where clients clinically have a lot of clinical complexity, but at the same time they have a lot of difficulty making behavior change, and it's really impacting negatively on them? And they said, would you please do renal? And I'm like, sure. So I went in, had no idea much about renal, learned a lot on the job. But Catherine, what was really striking is that the clinics that I inherited had a 50% no-show rate. So 50% of the people that were booked in never showed up. And I just couldn't believe that that was happening in one of the biggest health services in our district, in our state, for renal care. And so with a lot of trial and error, a lot of refining of the counselling process, we turned around that no-show rate from 50% to 5% in 12 months. And from there, I started tracking all of the client outcomes and started doing research studies on them as well. Several of them have been published, and I've been able to show what difference it can make when people come and see dietitians that are living with renal disease, and at the same time, what can happen when you are using a counselling strategy that is so client-centered and focused on client engagement and retention to eventually help them make changes. And so my manager started to notice what types of outcomes we were getting. The nephrologist started noticing as well. And then I got invited to create an education program, a pilot counselling skills program for dietitians in a very big district in my state. And we were able to do that under research conditions, and it got published with really great, significant, like just not only meaningful changes for the dietitians in their confidence and in their abilities to do their work, but also statistical differences as well, which was great to be able to show. And it was actually those dietitians, Catherine, that encouraged me to run the program in a commercial setting so more dietitians could access it. And that's how I ended up teaching counselling to registered dietitians now, and also to students in universities as well.
Yeah. So the interesting thing I'm hearing you say is that you saw a need, you got extra training in the form of the master's in counseling, and then you were able to apply that directly to where it would be best served, right? Notice the significant gains made by implementing this new framework in addition to just, rote nutrition education. And then that's where the idea to bring this to a broader commercial business to business training came from.
Yes, that's a lovely summary. Thank you.
Okay. And so you were working at a clinic, and then so you also started seeing people in private practice as well? How do these pieces all fit together?
Yeah, so in Australia, the system is a little bit different. So if you think of the US equivalent of the Medicare system, where people with renal disease will have lots of visits to a dietitian if they want to take advantage of them, our hospital service works very similar to that. And so I ended up managing all of the renal nutrition services for one of the biggest districts of renal care in New South Wales, where I live. And it was really treated like almost like a private clinic, very similar to Medicare that you would have in the US. And so I was always managing those clinics, seeing a lot of clients throughout those clinics, and tracking their outcomes. And then my business now, which is the business to business model of training dietitians in counseling skills, that is completely private. So that is not linked to another organization the way that the renal clinics would have been.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah. Very, very helpful. Yeah. And so how much time are you spending with actual patient care these days with the clinic?
Yeah, so up until about 12 months ago, it was 50% of my time was with clients, like nutrition clients. But this is probably the first year where I'm not seeing clients directly. I'm actually researching them. So I'm also doing a PhD, and I just couldn't manage the clinical work with the PhD and the counselling business all together. And so this is the first year where I'm just 50% PhD, 50% business. So I still get to, I'm interviewing a lot of clients living with renal disease now. So I still get to be very connected and close to them in that way. Okay. So we're looking at their client experiences and what how dietetic services can be improved to meet their needs to change their eating behaviors.
Great, hugely needed. Yes, yes, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about the counseling skills framework. And is it grounded in any particular counseling modality? How should we talk about this?
Yeah, sure. So it's grounded in several counselling modalities. So as I was going through my master's in counselling, we were learning about a lot of models. There was the motivational interviewing model, the cognitive behavioural therapy model, the narrative therapy model, more strengths-based and solutions-focused model. And I just felt like there wasn't really one model that just fit so well with dietetics, or that fit the cycles, the emotional cycles and the behavioural cycles that most people need to go through to get ready for eating behaviour change. So I've actually taken the skills that I have felt fit mostly to our nutrition care process from lots of different modalities, and I've almost inserted them into how we would structure our initial sessions, our follow-up sessions, and when clients are struggling with certain issues, how to really explore them deeply. So it's very much an eclectic use of different counselling modalities. So then we can meet the needs of clients that are specifically trying to change eating behaviours. And the counselling evidence is really moving towards that now. They've been able to show that it's not one modality that makes the biggest difference to client outcomes. It's actually multiple modalities, and then the clinician's ability to be able to use that and build a very strong relationship with their clients.
Right. And do you have, if you're thinking of the client experience, is there an average or typical number of visits that are more ideal in order to really get this process going for them, or does that tend to vary?
It definitely tends to vary on the goals of the client seeking nutrition services. So for example, with eating disorders, it's very common to be able to still be seeing someone 2 or 3 years on. In renal clinics, very similar. People tend to stay a little bit longer if they feel like there's value to it. So I would say that perhaps it's until people can meet their goals. And so if someone's goals can be met in 3 to 6 months, then that might be enough. And then they end up just coming back for maintenance appointments. But if they need longer, I would say about most of the dietitians I work with will see their clients for 6 to 12 months. And then we'll offer some maintenance sessions as needed. So it's not really number of sessions, it's more the time needed to meet goals. But there is a bit of a sweet spot with how often to be seeing people. And that's generally between like 2 to 6 weeks is the sweet spot of follow-up, especially at the beginning, if your clients have that capacity.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I've noticed that too in my own counseling, that it isn't necessarily the frequency, right? It's the length of time of the relationship to get the goals met and provide the support. So that's validating for my own experience too. Yeah.
Yes.
So would you say that you're weaving in concepts from motivational interviewing, CBT, and also narrative therapy and the other ones that you mentioned? Or what would you say are the primary ones that are the most useful for nutrition counseling?
I would say that there are strengths in each of those models, And when I look at the framework that I teach dietitians, there's probably a mainly even mix of all of them together, because all of them will give you skills to really help assess how people are struggling, why they're struggling. Do they have a very well established future vision of what they want to be achieving? Are they intrinsically motivated? And so each model sort of comes in at whatever point your client is going to need it. And so if you get a client who starts off strong, but they start to give up quite quickly, you're going to do something different compared to when it's a client who might need more help with confidence rather than building their motivation. So it's really about having the strategies, Catherine, to meet your clients where they are. So you don't have to say, come back when you're ready, because a lot of that readiness to change comes from that therapeutic medium between you and your client, where you can help them build that insight and that awareness into why eating behavior change could mean a lot to them if they were able to do it.
Yes, yes. And it also sounds like with experience comes that clinical judgment to know when the right time is to employ whichever tool we're using.
Absolutely. So while it sounds very theoretical now that I'm talking about it, when I teach it, I break everything down into practical steps. This is what you try and do in the first 5-10 minutes of your consultation. This is how you fit it into your assessment questions that you still need to do, and so on.
So I'm curious about the structure of your training course. How many weeks is it? How many sessions? How do you what would someone expect if they were going to sign up?
Yeah, sure. So my signature program, which is the one I teach, where the framework has been published, that runs for 12 weeks. And there is online content that is gradually released over the 12-week period, so it doesn't feel too overwhelming. And that is the curriculum that people go through, that dietitians will go through in their own time. Then we also meet weekly for group coaching calls, where people can come in. They can either treat their part of the group coaching call as a supervision session, as a role-playing session, as a Q&A session, because a lot of the counseling implementation happens through you building your confidence to use the skills that you're learning. So you can learn the skills and think to yourself, this makes so much sense, I can't wait to try it. And then you can easily try it. It doesn't go the way that you think it should have gone, and you talk yourself out of doing it again. And so that supervision and mentoring and coaching every week is quite crucial, because that's what's going to allow you to keep being brave and courageous to do things differently, so you can see the rewards of all your efforts in 3 to 6 months time. Now, because it's a global business and not everyone can meet like a certain time, although it's very US friendly, I also have like messenger support throughout the week, so I'm constantly in contact with the dietitians that I work with. So whilst it's a group program, there is a lot of individualization and coaching that happens to meet the needs of the dietitians and their practices and the unique needs of their own clientele as well.
And I can imagine how helpful this would be for someone who, say, they try a set of skills or tools with a particular client, and it's just it works, it's easy, and then all of a sudden they try the same thing with someone that has maybe a more challenging presentation, and then feel completely thrown off. And you can sort of maybe, I guess, troubleshoot how to navigate a situation like that. Can you give us a little bit of insight in how that might go?
Yeah, sure. So the troubleshooting part with me?
Yeah.
Yep. So typically what happens is the dietitians in the programs will come to me and say, Stephanie, I tried this. This is how it went. I'm not sure if I did it correctly. It didn't feel the way I expected it to feel. What do you think? And so the first step that I always take them through is a bit of their own reflection and building awareness around the situation. because whilst your clients are going to be having an emotional resistance to change and difficulty with change, you as the dietitian, whenever you're doing something new, you're also going to have a bit of your own emotional response, and you're going to be prematurely evaluating how it should be going and not giving yourself that learning period. And so separating the two is really important for longevity and confidence to keep going, because you want to know what is really your internal reaction versus the client's reaction. And so I help them really separate the two. So then it sets the foundation on how they can do it for themselves moving forward, and working out if there is an issue with they just, it wasn't the right technique with the client, or the client didn't wasn't ready for that. We troubleshoot warning signs to look out for, like, things to, not warning signs and not necessarily red flags, but even like little pink flags of, or if a client's feeling like this, maybe take a step back and explore this a little bit more before you challenge them too quickly. Find out a little bit more about the problem. Don't push them too quickly into change talk or finding solutions, because that can very much predispose them to feeling defensive and like they haven't been heard. And a lot of that comes with time, Catherine, time and lots of supervision and support to get the results that you really want for your practice and the way that you want to be counseling your clients too. So my style is very much empathic and supportive, but at the same time, I like to lead the dietitians and help them find solutions and practical strategies to whatever they're going through.
Right, right. And again, I want to highlight how the importance of that long-term relationship between the clinician and the client is so necessary here, because if we're expected to make the change happen in a shorter period of time, or the client believes that it should happen in a shorter period of time, then we're really setting both of us up for failure, right? So setting those expectations at first, like this can take a while. Maybe it'll be easier. Maybe we'll run into some stumbling blocks. But if we don't give it the time, whatever time it needs, then we're not going to be successful.
Absolutely. And that was actually something that came up in one of my research studies looking at the client experience with eating behavior change and their experiences with dietitians. And the nutrition clients under research settings basically said that to me, like, you need to let us know how long to expect things will take, that things might be difficult. And so that's one technique that I teach very much in my program. And all the dietitians that finish the 12-week program are very clear on how to be explaining the process of change to their clients, how to be helping them manage their expectations, because that's a crucial part to improving people's tolerance for change, because they're going to feel uncomfortable about change not happening or results not happening quick enough. And it's not about people not feeling uncomfortable. It's about knowing that it's part of the process and setting that up. And I think a lot of dietitians, at least the ones I work with, they're very open with me, and they'll tell me, I feel so bad telling someone that this could take 6 to 12 months. And then I coach them through it. Well, it's better they know, and then they can make an informed decision about how much support they get, rather than thinking that this should be shorter. I should be done within 2 to 3 sessions. They're not. They're disappointed, and then you're disappointed too. But if you communicate everything from the very beginning, it's really hard to get annoyed with someone that has told you what to expect from the beginning. If anything, they'll keep coming back, and you will be skilled after the program to help them improve their tolerance to change and help them work through that emotional resistance they're having to changing their eating behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of it's a win-win for everyone if that happens.
Yes, yes. So you're making a really powerful case, clearly, for the importance of good counseling skills alongside supervision and practice. And so I'm wondering, what does this tell us about our basic fundamental university nutrition education, right? Because we do not get very much. We might get some counseling theory, maybe a little bit of practice for one semester, and that's about it. What can we do to change this? I know we live in different places, but what are your thoughts?
Even though we live in different places, Catherine, the US and the Australian and the UK data and the European data as a whole, when they survey dietitians, we all mention the same thing. The biggest theme is that they don't feel equipped to handle the counselling issues or dilemmas in their practice when people are struggling to change. Now, I also lecture at universities for student dietitians, and I think that there is a lot of room for improvement in the curriculums to be able to expose students to the difficulties of eating behavior change, that it's not just about knowing the what, it's about helping your clients with the how and being skilled in behavior change strategies. At the same time, what I've noticed is that we've had several universities do a much better job at this in the last 5 to 10 years. However, when students reach their internship and the dietitians that are supervising them aren't practicing in that way, that skill set drops very, very quickly. And so whilst it's important to introduce concepts to students, the quickest way for someone to learn is if their supervisors are practicing this way, and if there is an awareness that ongoing CPD in counselling for dietitians is something that everyone should just be engaging in, because it evolves as you mature into your practice as well. And so that's why a lot of my research now and my business is with registered dietitians, because not only do you impact on the direct care you have with your clients, but if you are a student supervisor, you will also be impacting on the student experience and how they're learning. Because I'm sure it's very similar in the US as it is in Australia. You need to meet the preferences of your supervisor. You're kind of stuck there. Every dietitian likes things to be done differently. So you adapt to whatever your supervisor is going to be happy with within the broader competency standards that CDR sets or our Dietitian Australia board sets. And so we really need to be focusing more on registered dietitians and accredited practicing dietitians. That's going to be the quickest way to filter down to the student dietitians that are directly watching you. Because listening to you is inspiring in a lecture, but they're also trying to get through their exams and they're trying to meet all the competency standards. So I think the registered post-registration is where we need to set the standard and the benchmark. And over the next decade, that is going to filter through to the universities and the students.
That's an excellent point. Yes. So starting from the higher level down rather from the bottom up. Right. Right. And I suppose as you're speaking, are US based dietitians able to get continuing education credits for taking your course at this point?
Yes. So 90% of the dietitians I work with are from the US.
Okay.
And so I've got all my programs CEU approved. So for the 12-week program, they get 30 CEU points for taking it to help meet their accreditation requirements.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. Because that to me is sort of that's the function of the continuing education. Okay, we didn't get this in school, and now how do I really build on my foundations in order to deliver better care? And it sounds like this is a really great way to do it. Yeah.
And also there's so many dietitians moving towards private practice now because they either like the flexibility it might bring, or they really love the longevity of care that they can give to people compared to like an inpatient hospital settings. And so you also need to look at the link it has from a business perspective. If you can get your clients coming back to you because of the rapport you're building, the engagement that they're having, and the fact that they're improving their understanding of what's going on for them and making changes, it actually helps you stay in business because it becomes profitable, so you can keep serving people in a private setting too. So I think it all comes back to, it all cycles back together.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I hear you on that for sure. Let's talk a little bit about, we're doing a little bit of a transition here to talk about the strategies behind marketing a program successfully as a B2B entity, right? So what are some of the ways that you um, reach potential customers? How do people find you? What are your marketing channels? How does this all work for you to get people to even know that you're around and find your course?
Yeah, this has been definitely an evolving process for me because all of my marketing happens through social media or word of mouth. And what's really interesting, Catherine, is because before I started my business, I was not social on social media. I didn't even know how to do a story on Instagram. So I was really starting from scratch. So now I have a presence on Instagram. My handle is at Dietitian Counseling Skills, and I have a presence on Facebook. I've got a free Facebook group for dietitians where they can access lots of trainings and ask questions. And I have a podcast as well called the Nutrition Counseling Corner. So very much reliant on social media and word of mouth referrals. A lot of the time it's the people will find me because they've spoken to dietitians that have done the program. They've had a good experience and they've shared it and they've gotten in contact with me. So that's where I get most of the dietitians finding me.
Yeah. So the social media, you've had to learn all of those skills, it sounds like, in order to do the marketing. Do you do it all yourself? Do you have someone who helps you?
No, I do all the marketing myself. And there's lots of trial and error with it. I'd say it's probably I would say that's the most challenging part of the business, the marketing for me, but I'm definitely getting better with it. So the way that I coach dietitians to coach their nutrition clients, I use all those skills on myself. So I increase my window of tolerance with marketing, which
Oh,
which is important because whenever something feels challenging in business, you're going to have an emotional resistance to it. And if you can coach yourself through it, you'll be able to get through it as well. So I have, though, probably from the beginning of my business, I have engaged with either business mentors to help me either with business building or like to help me with the marketing as well. So I've learned a lot along the way.
mm-hmm. So, um, which of those marketing channels do you think gives you the most leads or the most visibility? Where are you finding it to be the most bang for your buck, so to speak?
I would probably say Facebook because more dietitians are on Facebook. And in probably the last 12 months, I've seen Instagram come up in percentage of where people find me. But I would say if I was to look at it as from the whole time I've been in business, I would say most people find me through Facebook.
Okay. And do you post videos? Do you post like tips on how to get started with counseling? Like what kind of content can people expect?
It's very varied content. So I tend to post video trainings in the Facebook group based on common dilemmas that people are having. Like, why are my clients not following recommendations? Why aren't I able to fill up my time in my follow-ups? Why am I going overtime? Why am I doing so much work outside of my sessions? Why are people not coming back, past 2 to 3 visits? And then so taking the issue and then helping dietitians understand what could be happening. So whilst you'll always walk away with practical tips from all my free content, I also want to help you reflect on what could be happening for you, because if you can understand what's happening first, then all the practical strategies will make sense as well. And I'd say the most common one that I work a lot with people in my free communities is to start trying to just educate less and not give so much information too soon to show your value, because people get very overwhelmed by that. And that's a big factor that reduces retention rates, and also working on helping people think a little bit more deeply about their reasons for eating behavior change. So I would say they would be the two. There's so many more, but they're the two top starting points that I would help dietitians reflect on first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yep. You're speaking right to me. That is something that I have been guilty of so many times, of like the way that you raised it, right? To feel like you need to provide a lot of value, as if you're needing to prove, like, see how much value I'm giving you. Now you'll come back. And the reality is people get totally overwhelmed. It's too much, it's too hard. And then they might not come back because they're sort of scared. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Or they start to think to themselves, I couldn't manage everything that Stephanie already told me.
Mm-hmm.
I can't go back for any more information. Or what else could they possibly tell me if I can't manage this already? So they talk themselves out of coming back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How much time do you think you spend per week or per month, as in hours, on like new marketing content creation?
I think there are definitely, it's ebbs and flows throughout it, because I've got two young kids as well. Life can be a little bit unpredictable with illnesses in these early years. So I would say my ideal time would be somewhere between 5 to 7 hours a week. If I spend that amount of time, I feel like, and productively, I feel like I've got good content coming out for people. But some weeks it could just be 2 hours a week. So it really depends on what's happening in the business and in life and with the PhD throughout that month. But I would say the minimum would be 2 to 3 hours a week at the absolute minimum. And when I am a bit more stretched for time, I just will look at, like, what do people need to hear from me this week? What would be the top messages I want to say this week? And then the rest of my time will go into the dietitians I'm working with to make sure that they're feeling supported and having a very good client experience with me. So that's how I sort of prioritize my time.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you were able to quantify the time spent in marketing, because I do think, I know for myself, sometimes I can get overwhelmed thinking, oh, it's going to be so much time spent, and then I'll just kind of procrastinate. But if I think about it in terms of these chunks, like you were saying, like, hey, just get your 2 to 3 hours a week, get that in. Sometimes you might have more time and you might have another project. But I think we can start to overwhelm ourselves by thinking that marketing has to take like an extra 15 hours a week, which it certainly doesn't. Yeah.
And you won't always have that time if you're running a business, because your clients still need to be your number one priority, especially if you are a solo practitioner, or it's just you doing it all. You still need to make sure that those clients are getting the best experience they can. But I do appreciate what you said. Like, sometimes I can overthink things too, and something that should have taken me 30 minutes still might take me 2 hours. And so it's good to reflect on that. Like, where are you getting stuck? Is there any pre-planning that can happen? So when you sit down for marketing, you've got the ideas, you don't have to think about them, and you sort of off you go to try and minimize a bit of that overthinking. I think that's something I've had to coach myself through a lot over the last 4.5 years.
Yeah. It sounds like the implication here is that not only are we learning these counseling and coaching skills to use with clients, but we can also do some self-coaching at the same time.
Oh, yes. And one thing that the dietitians mention a lot to me in the 12-week program is that they love seeing me coach them through the strategies that I'm teaching them to use with their clients, because and that's their own reflection. I never say, oh, notice what I've done here. Just seems to be something that every round, every new cohort says to me. And I think it's because whatever behavior change process you're trying to engage in, whether it's eating behavior change or changing your counseling patterns and strategies, you're still following the same cycle. The cycle is the same or very similar. And so it's good to be on the receiving end of how someone might feel when you're using these strategies, because then you're more likely to go off and use them if you've had a good experience with them too.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. How many times do you offer the full course over a year?
Usually either we will do either 3 or 4 rounds a year.
Wow, that's busy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
nice. So as we're wrapping up here, I'm curious about, let's say, like, I can see how somebody that's sort of a fresh newbie dietitian, this is perfect for them, right? Now, what about somebody who might be a little bit more of a veteran? Maybe they've been in practice for a long time, and they might think, well, on one hand, I've got my counseling skills, so I don't know if I need all of this. What could Stephanie teach me as someone who's been doing this for 20 years, for example, right? And maybe their skills are rusty. They need to kind of reinvigorate them, or maybe they're tired of counseling and they want to get more excited about their counseling again.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've actually got a lot of data on this to answer for you. So I've separated everyone who's done my program, both in the pilot program that was under research conditions, and then all the dietitians that have done the 12-week program. And I've analyzed their outcomes and their evaluation based on, are you 0 to 5 years post registration, 6 to 10 years, or 10 years and over. And what's really interesting is that they each rate, there's no real difference between the groups in terms of how beneficial they find the program. But there is a bit of the only difference is that if you are newer, your confidence is going to increase faster, versus if you are 10 or 20 years out, you're already starting with a higher baseline confidence. But I would say that it really depends on where you are with your practice. If you're 20 years in, but you don't have the client retention that you want, you are going to get so much out of this program, or the client results that you're hoping for, because there is so much individualization, Catherine. So you will all learn the same framework, but there's got to be individualization there for you to have a good experience. And that's why I can only offer the program 3 or 4 times a year, because there's a lot that goes into coaching dietitians to have time to reflect and to be supervised. So then you actually get what you need at each stage of your career and to develop your services. So counseling also helps you with service development. And that was one of my specialties with running the renal services for over 10 years, is how do you build services from exceptional client experiences and results that are stemming from a very strong counseling framework. So I would say that the data I have shows that it's beneficial for anyone who doesn't have their client retention, client results, and their own confidence with helping clients where they want it to be.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So this is the beauty of having something that gives individualized attention and support through the supervision that you offer alongside the regular curriculum. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's how the implementation happens most successfully.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I imagine the same would be said for our individual nutrition counseling. So we want to individualize it. So you're really mirroring the practice in the training course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So anybody who is feeling like, what kind of advice would you give to someone who is really feeling a little bit stuck, and, you know, whether or not they're ready to take your course, but where would be a good place for someone to start thinking about improving their counseling skills? Like what could be some first steps for them?
Yeah. So the first steps I would be recommending is access some of the resources that I have available to you, that where you only need to invest your time. You don't need to invest anything else. And so the Nutrition Counseling Corner podcasts the episodes are a really good place to start. Every episode is going to leave you with some actionable strategies and reflective practice points, because you really need both. You need that reflection and then what to practically do to move forward. And if you can, join the Facebook community as well that I have available, because there are lots of trainings in there for you to choose to listen to and try things in your own time, and then get in touch with me if you've got questions. So you never need to, like, if there's lots of resources available at whatever stage you are in terms of your capacity to invest, whether you can only invest time right now versus you want to invest time and financially invest as well to be trained on this topic.
Right. And we'll add that you're also getting CEUs, especially if you're a US-based dietitian. So let's add that too, that it's you get some extra value in return for that. So let's please, once we post the replay, we'll add some of the links and resources that you just mentioned in the comments, so that people have easy access to them. And other than that, how can they, where would they be able to reach you most easily? Website, social media, where would we send people?
Probably social media is the easiest. So they can either find me on Instagram at Dietitian Counselling Skills, or I'm on Facebook under Stephanie Notaras Dietitian.
Great.
Yep.
Well, this has been so informative, and I truly hope that our audience has appreciated this. I think you make such an excellent case for that advanced training and individualized support with learning how to implement, learn the theory and implementation of counseling skills for nutrition, eating behavior change. So thanks everyone who is watching now or watching the replay, and we'll be back next week with one more before we take a break before the new year. So I want to thank Stephanie again for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Catherine. Thanks for all that you do for this community. We really appreciate it.
Oh, well, I appreciate that feedback. It's always, sometimes you feel like you're operating in a vacuum sometimes.
It's what you have built is very, very special for us. So thank you so much. And thank you for being such a great admin too. I love how you step in when you need to, with a lot of, like, your leadership really shows through, and then you sometimes just let everyone work it out when it's okay for them to do that. So I've noticed that approach as well.
That I appreciate, because you just sort of never know when you're being intruding too much or not being active enough. So that's really appreciated. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. And thank you, everyone. And we'll see you again. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.